Good evening. Welcome to Hunter College and the Distinguished Writers Series on behalf of President Jennifer Rabb and the College of Arts and Sciences. Glad to see you all here. This is the first of our Distinguished Writers visitors this semester, and it's a great lineup. Is somebody going to tell me the Laura Kashishki? Thank you. I hadn't seen your face yet. Laura Kashishki is coming up. We have Jennifer Egan later in the semester. Eula Biss is coming, and Casey Limon are all going to be here. So it's a great lineup this semester, and that great lineup begins this evening with James Hannaham, who we're very lucky to have. He is a man of many talents. He is a visual artist, a performer who co-founded one of the most significant performance groups in New York of the last 20 years, Elevator Repair Service, a prolific critic, a journalist, a teacher, and also, thankfully, and most definitely, a fiction writer. In his work and in his life, he has not just moved between these modes and worlds, which is more than most of us do. He has found ways to import the powers of these different arts into one another, making visual work that relies on the verbal dexterity of a literary mind, and crafting fiction that is as deeply informed by performance as it is by the tradition of the novel. As writers, we're always sniffing around looking for tricks, or put more generously, casting about for inspirations. And along the way, we get jealous and glad when we see other writers who have managed to find that entry point of form that lets the content bottled up in most of us just rip out onto the page. And I can certainly say that I had that experience reading James's last novel, Delicious Foods, and in particular reading wide-eyed the voice of crack cocaine, a character in the novel, Scotty, every bit as real and possessed of spirit as the humans it bedevils. Yes, I thought, yes, a drug as a character. Why didn't I think of that? Mine would have been Klonopin, so the book would probably have been a lot slower and potentially far less entertaining. But still, he did it. Delicious Foods did it. And if ever there was prose that drew on the live wire, high stakes, go for broke necessity of great performance art, Scotty's sections in that novel are it. Or so I thought until I got in the mail an early copy of Did Nobody Give a Shit What Happened to Carlotta? And then I opened it and read it in 2 days. And when I put it down, I said to myself, but there was no intermission. People toss around the term tour de force, using it as a generalized complement of something very good. But when I use it to describe this book, you'll hear some of this evening. I mean it literally. It is a tour of many things, in fact, of the largely invisible nightmare of re-entry for previously incarcerated people, of gentrified and still gentrifying Brooklyn, of the ragged social margin Black trans women are made to occupy. And in the voice of Carlotta, it is performed with a verbal torque you will not soon forget. As I said to the editor that we share, it is the fastest, funniest, and most furious novel I've read in ages. Now for the conventional stuff. James won the Penn Faulkner Award. He's won the Hurston Wright Legacy Award. He's exhibited his visual art all over New York. He's written a sui generis book that meditates on air travel, Fernando Pessoa, and contemporary politics. He's traveled to Vanuatu. Did I pronounce that right? He's traveled to Vanuatu with his husband and lived to tell the tale for travel and leisure. And luckily for us, he's made the trip to 68th Street to read for us this evening. So please welcome James Hannaham.
By mentioning Vanuatu, you reminded me of one of my favorite post-colonial stories, which is that at a certain point a few years ago, the island of Erromango, which is one of the 86 or so islands that's part of the island chain of Vanuatu, thank you, Trying to take my water. They issued a formal apology to one of the relatives of Captain Cook for having eaten him. All right, I'm gonna get settled here. I've had the good fortune and hard work and sabbatical during the pandemic of releasing 2 books in 1 year. One of them, this is one of them, the Pessoa, the book about air disasters in Pessoa and lots of other things. And didn't nobody give a shit what happened to Carlotta, which I suppose I have to read from now because you've given us. No, it doesn't. You don't have to respond. Oh, I also have to do this now. Trying to think what. Oh, maybe I'll read this section. So this is the story of a trans woman coming back from upstate New York in an upstate New York prison after about 21 years in captivity. And I'll try to explain less, actually. This is a moment where she's just come back from her first meeting with her parole officer, Lou DeLay, who's a Butch Dyke. And I guess I'll explain things as they need explaining. I need a job, need a job, not a good job, just a dumbass job. Lou said that, and I keep saying it in my head till it become a little song, like something I could dance to while I'm on the way to this interview. I think I can, like I'm the little engine that could, or maybe couldn't, the little engine who gonna fuck it up. Lou did me a good turn. She all right. She seen one of them jobs on the sheet, the boss, somebody she know good enough to call up right then, make sure he in the office, and said, I got somebody you should take a look at. The somebody being Miss Thing herself. And said what I was about, too. I ain't wanted to do that part. I don't know what kind of juju she done worked on his ass, but the motherfucker said, yes, send the bitch down. Not the bitch, but her, me. They said I need a couple of pictures to put in with the application, but Lou told me to just do passport photos at the drugstore and where it was. See, this the only type of job where they don't mind that you got a record. This is a good ass job too. 13 an hour, dental, medical, vacation, sick leave. Said they're gonna pay you on your birthday like it's a holiday. Honest to the Lord Jesus, who I don't believe in no more. Best of all, it said paid training on that job application. Gotta get this mother. Should sound more like a vacation than a work job to me. I'd be on Easy Street, move out of that house next week. That place so crowded, it's like living in the Atlantic Pacific train station. Wait, who am I kidding? Myself, that's who. Can't nobody walk out the joint after 20 some odd years and grab a job on no first day out? That'd be stealing. But I can't be setting all my hopes on this one job that I gotta get or I'm gonna die. I mean, I ain't gonna get it. But what if I did? I mean, I got to. Dude's name is Boz. Sound like he's some kind of ex-con himself. Maybe that's gonna make him more on my side. Or less? Why do it always gotta be so much not knowing what's gonna happen in life? Also, there's a little problem. I said I could get my driver's license renewed for the job, but I ain't never learned to drive or nothing. When the hell I ever needed to drive shit? Not while I've been on ice up in fucking PC on D Block or whatever. Damn. I wish I ain't told Lou that I could drive. Otherwise, she wouldn't have got my hopes up about this here thing, Anywho, I'm just going to give it my best try. Could be that they also need like a non-driver type person to maybe deal with the wheelchairs or shit like that. I could be that person. On the way over, I'm like, could these people with their double strollers and these blind chillins who came out of some Gerber baby food ad get out my fucking way? But that's nice though, smiling when I was thinking it. I seen all kind of tiny little boutiques too, and I'm thinking maybe I could get my nails did or buy some new shoes, ha ha ha, with the gate money I shouldn't be spending. But hell, I'm gonna have a job by the end of the day, so why the fuck not? Baby got to go out on the town after a hard day at the work, no? Meet herself a rich ass motherfucker to pay for her life and shit. Oh, I didn't mean none of that. I ain't gonna say no if it happened, but it's like Grandma Frona always said, you got to do for self. I mean, she didn't never step aside to let nobody do for themselves, but she sure said the hell out of that one. Let me tell you, every last one of them stores look like it's somebody's apartment, and it got a name on the front like Amanda or Joaquin, and inside it's everything painted white and like only like 5 motherfucking tiny shoes, one at a time. And darling, I couldn't wrap my mind around that. I guess when you got a little money to spend, you don't want to be thinking about which style of shoe you're going to get or the price. So I go in one of these joints, and there go Amanda herself, sitting in the back in a maxi dress. And I know I'm gonna be like putting my face back on after I find out how much Amanda's shoes cost, but I don't want the actual designer seeing my face fall off. So I say to her, I go, how much is this? And I pick up the shoe and hold it up, and she goes, it's $250. And take a pause and then says, dollars. Like my ass so stupid, I don't know what's the name of money or nothing about how much shit should cost. Or I'm so poor. I nod. What, do the bitch think I'm like, it's $2.50? So I go, 100, and almost busted out laughing. Then she like, her shoe. On the inside, I was like, come the fuck again? But I just said, all calm and shit like some Upper East Side bitch, cocked my head to the side and puffed my hair. I went, oh, of course. So 5 for the pair. And kept nodding my damn head, like just knowing how to add 250 to 250 be some kind of way to get on the inside with some rich ass elites. I mean, damn, it'd be a nice shoe too. A gold leather sandal with the heel wrapped in white leather, imported from Peru and shit. Very classy and not too sparkly to wear to this new job or to the interview, I thought. But if I bought it at that gigantic price, I want to put it in the damn jewelry box instead of wearing it, or like coat it in plastic like a couch so it would never, I would never drip no mustard on it or nothing. Picture my ass down at Coney Island with a date, biting into a hot dog and squirting yellow blobs all over that bitch. Nah, honey, my ass ain't high class by a long shot, but it's higher class than that. Meanwhile, I'm saying it about the shoe because at that moment I was like, there ain't no motherfucking way I could afford 2 of these bad boys. Maybe I could just get the one and put the other on layaway. I'm just right about to ask if they got a layaway policy, and it hit me that you can't be asking shit like that at no Amanda, especially not to know Amanda actual face. Then some shit happened in my brain. Well, I don't want nobody to be shaming me over those shoes. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I got shit to prove, just like up in Ithaca. That prison mentality done snuck up on my brain like Dracula jumping up out the coffin at 7 p.m. sharp and shit. Like, gotta give me some blood, 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 blood. I'm like, I do got some money. And damn it, this America right here, I'm back out the joint and I'm gonna celebrate myself and reward myself for getting through all that lockdown bullshit and staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive. After all, my birthday not that long ago, just a month and a half. I'll be damned if I'm gonna give Amanda the satisfaction of thinking I ain't good as the next white bitch who come in here looking to get her hands on one goddamn $250 for one shoes. You feel me? So I was going to cash that check and put some money on at least one of them damn shoes to show Amanda what's what and who. Carlotta whipped around to Amanda or whoever it was and said, I'll be right back for these. Then spent a few minutes rubbernecking up and down the block for a check cashing joint. And I mean, them shoes ain't a be all end all, you know, and maybe as a accessoride driver don't really want to wear no $500 metallic gold shoes on a job. Excuse me. You could shut the fuck up right now, conscience. I don't know who said you could be all up in my head and in my shit anyway. Motherfuckers going to have to start paying rent if they want to be taking up residence in my skull. This is a luxury skull right here. Made in Brooklyn, motherfucker. $250 for the left or the right half of this bitch brain. Ain't there one of them damn places somewhere around here? Or did Amanda get rid of them because they be bringing in the wrong element that been here since before her stupid ass even got born? Maybe they closed for the holiday observed. Carlotta walked north, scanning for a place to cash a check, and spotted a storefront up the street with a sign above the door that read Check-O-Rama in yellow caps. What's up with that whack-ass name? Do they got Reality Check and Check-Filet too? She jaywalked from the west side of Smith to the east, pissing off the driver of a bleeding green taxi cab. Why the cabs out here green? What the ever-loving shit that supposed to be about? Do I got color blindness? Dang, it is hot out here. What with me walking all over the motherfucking place. Mama's sweating to the oldies. I love it though. Freedom. Look at me walking across the street. Let me stop on this damn yellow line and do my freedom dance. Woo! Look it. Who am I? The Statue of Liberty. Yes, honey. She squeegeed beads of sweat off her recently tweezed eyebrows and flicked the moisture to the pavement. The air smelled like the inside of a dog's mouth, and the sun got so hot that it hurt a little, but I didn't care. I ain't seen the sun in so long, I could have ate it, the whole damn sun. I'm gonna be blacker than Wesley Snipes tomorrow, but where my fucks at? Don't got a one. A handwritten sign on the door of Check-O-Rama said they'd be closing at 2 p.m. until Tuesday. Looked like I got lucky. Inside, an AC caked with greasy dust loomed above the front door, lowering the inside temperature by about 1 degree. 2 black people, a squat, toothless grandma and a chunky man with giant, sexy lips, waited as a gnarled-looking, possibly homeless white man argued with the teller, a woman whose accent placed her heritage somewhere in the West Indies, although she looked like someone from India, her hair dark and sleek as a mink coat. Her firm, deadpan attitude and business duds contrasted sharply with the messy man's high-pitched squeals, his steel wool hair. He spotted a tent-size army surplus raggedy coat. He sported a tent-size army surplus coat raggedy enough to have fought in Vietnam by itself. Hey, ain't that Nick Nolte? After what seemed like a long time, because it was a long time, Carlotta got to the window and pushed her check underneath to the firm West Indian lady, who had the sticker of a Trinidadian flag in her window. Carlotta wouldn't have recognized the flag, but it said Trinidad underneath. Just before she got to the window, another person materialized in the next space over and set up his area, a man in gold-rimmed glasses with flipped-up bifocals and long locks piled up on his head. The Trini lady asked Carlotta to endorse the check, but Carlotta stopped cold, realizing what name they'd expect to see. She flipped the check over twice, then a third time, and when the universe didn't disappear, which might have made it possible for her to get what she wanted, she tried to sign with a pen connected to a bead chain on the counter. But the pen only made little scratches, no marks. She shook the pen, trying to revive it, but the ink wouldn't budge. The lady slid a fresh pen into the metal space under the teller window. Carlotta signed the check and passed it back to her. The lady let her dead eyes pass over it blankly. By this time, the dreadlocks man had perched on his chair and snapped his bifocals into place. He squinted at Carlotta. Why that motherfucker grilling me so hard? I mean, I know I look good, but you don't gotta stare. Carlotta dipped her hips and then wondered if that might seem flirtatious. Oh, I could give 2 shits about looking flirty. I know Frenzy, that's her man from upstate. I know Frenzy would eat this man's brain right out his head if he knew, but he ain't gonna know. Picture Heidi, the Trini woman said. God damn this shit. I guess I knew this was gonna happen. Carlotta opened her mouth to explain her predicament. She rifled through her grandmother's bag and found the laser-printed temporary ID Ithaca had issued her and passed it to the Trini lady. Then the brother with the locks spoke up. Hey, bruh, wasn't you? He snapped his fingers several times. Chambers. Bruh. Oh, Lord of mercy. I better cut ahead of this shit. Yes, I was Chambers. It's Carlotta now. Carlotta Mercedes. Oh, whatever the fuck. That name be the one on the damn check that oh shit, I just signed it Carlotta Mercedes. So I gotta suck it up for now. Swallow your pride, honey. Just pretend like your pride be a big fat dick. And hey, brother, ain't you Crow? I ain't had no idea who in creation this man was. You don't remember me? The Trini lady unfolded Carlotta's ID and turned it around in her hand. This is not valid, she announced. What is this? Carlotta shifted her attention back to the Trini lady to try to explain what had happened, but it came out backward. You don't remember me, do you? The clerk with the locks insisted. He sounded put out. Oh my God, now you're gonna make an issue out this shit when it been literally decades since I seen anybody ass in this town? I've been away in the fucking country club, you chump. Great God Almighty, church, canst thou believe you it? Could I get an amen? Yes, of course I recognize you. You're my brother's ex-girlfriend's social worker's baby father's friend's bartender. How the fuck could I forget? But hold the phone, y'all. Maybe since he remembered me, he could vouch for me and help me get this here check cashed. How could I forget that pretty face? Carlotta asked. Apparently pretty easy, the man drawled, acting butthurt as he shuffled papers and jingled coins around in his tray. Suddenly he flipped into bona fide attitude. It's me, Alphonse, Alpha Dog. The nickname Alpha Dog did ring a bell, a chime from so long ago that they probably spelled it D-O-G back then. Maybe one of David's friends, that's her brother. This bro be way too cool to be a friend of Tom's, her other brother. Probably smoked a lot of ganja. She took her memory down like a CO, but she still felt like she was squinting into peach-colored streetlight through a thick fog. Oh, despite all the eye strain, she couldn't figure it out until, oh shit! He was my best friend's pot dealer going way to hell back. How on earth he remembered me? Must be some kind of genius, like one of them 3-year-old kids that could kick your ass at chess, done memorized all the geographies of the whole world. What the hell kind of career path this motherfucker on? Not that I got no right to judge, but that's the best time to judge, when you ain't got no rights to it. Except this shit gonna be tricky. I can't really associate myself with nobody like him, or I'm gonna be back upstate in a New York minute. But aside from kissing up to this dude, how am I supposed to get this check cashed and get both my Amanda shoes? Oh snap, Alpha Dog, of course I remember you. Now I gotta think up a memory about him that prove I know the brother, but don't involve no references to no drug use. I ain't coming up with nothing too fast here. I remember when Doodle and me used to, we go up to your, yeah, when you'd come to our, and we wait outside for you to, yeah. Carlotta nodded and grinned, hoping Alphonse would get it. The Trini clerk watched, poker-faced, like she could demolish their conversation with her eyes. Maybe she couldn't wait to enjoy rejecting Carlotta's check. She passed the temporary back to Carlotta. I need to see some picture ID, please. I am sorry, ma'am, that's all I got. Carlotta leaned against the window and then, thinking twice, down into the stainless steel gulch under the plexiglass. Listen, Alphonse, could you do me a favor? Her voice rang out against the metal down there, sounding like a robot. Does not compute, she said quietly to test out the robot voice. I'm sorry, what? Oh, I sound like a robot down there. I was just kidding around. I was thinking, since you know me and everything, maybe you could vouch for me so I could cash this check here. Could you give him the check? The Trini lady, now irritated, pushed the check halfway toward her colleague and asked Carlotta to move aside. Another 2 people had shown up on line behind her. Alphonse leaned into the lady's space. He took the check and went back. Carlotta slid to his window. He swiveled his head like an electric fan between something he was reading and something he seemed to notice about Carlotta's face. Maybe how much older she looked. Maybe he noticed the difference in gender presentation, but he suddenly shut down. No wonder I ain't seen you in so long, Alphonse laughed. How long you was up there? He'd figured out the issuer of the check. Shit. She didn't care about Alphonse knowing, but the Trini woman and the people online didn't need to know her business. Oh, I wasn't no inmate or nothing. I used to work up there in the kitchen, and this is my severance pay for when I come back, she said through her teeth to show him she was lying. I hope he know to keep his damn mouth shut. The Trini clerk suddenly halted her transaction with another customer to butt in. She pointed her finger at the check like she was accusing it of lying. Oh no, that's not the kind of check they issue to employees. That's a check for when they... She fumbled for the right term for the kind of person she had to describe. Maybe since that kind of person was right in front of her, firing mental daggers into her cheeks. Carlotta's embarrassment contorted her face. Formerly incarcerated person, she said curtly. I hope she heard the person part. Oh yeah, you're right, Shivana, Alphonse said. That don't matter, Carlotta said. What I need is to get it cashed. It ain't illegal to get out of prison. I mean, damn, that's one of the most not illegal things going, y'all. To not be in prison no more. It mean you clean, you starting over, you can't afford to be up to no good. Why don't nobody get that? I'll stop there. I thought I would also go back in time a little bit and pretend to be a poet of some kind. Because this book, Pilot Imposter, is a series of responses to poems by Fernando Pessoa. It's actually a sort of shadow book to an anthology called Pessoa and Company. I'll try to explain this as quickly as I can, but it might take a while. I was the first time I visited Africa, I went to Cape Verde, and there was a stopover in Lisbon, and I usually bring a representative work from whatever new country I'm going to. I had read a book by Almeida, his last name, I always forget, which was kind of short. And I was on the plane to Lisbon. I started reading the Pessoa book. It was actually December of 2016, right after You Know What, Who became the You Know What of the You Know Where. And the mood was pretty frustrating for me anyway. I don't know if I'm not going to assume all of you are frustrated by it, but I was pretty bummed. And the first line in the book of Pessoa poems is, I've never kept sheep, but it's as if I did. And that to me was like, it kind of triggered a lot, because I was thinking like, oh, he's lying about his resume already. This is the first line of the poem book. And this is somebody lying about their resume. And already at that point, there had been some comedians who had been talking about how electing who was like, hiring a plumber without any experience, like, or a pilot. You wouldn't want somebody who was not a pilot to be your pilot. And I was on a plane already. And by the end of this plane trip, I had decided that I was going to respond to every last one of the poems in the book. And as if to bless this whole idea, when I got to the airport, I'd rented a car, and I went to the car, the stand, the dealership, but dealership? It's not really a dealership. The kiosk. And the woman behind the counter had a nameplate on that said Pessoa. And I thought, oh, it must be a really common last name in Portugal. Here I am in Portugal. And so I used that as an opportunity to like say, hey, is that a common name in Portugal? And she said, no. I was like, oh, well, I've been reading this poet. And she was like, oh, Fernando Pessoa. I don't know his work. Excuse me, I don't know if I'm related to him, but I love his work. So anyway, I ended up actually doing that. I did respond to every last one of the poems. And in whatever genre seemed appropriate, I decided to sort of mimic his project, which was to create all of the Portuguese poets he didn't seem to think were. He was a Portuguese poet of the early part of the 20th century who seemed to feel as if there weren't enough Portuguese poets. So he invented about 73 or so of them himself. And he called them heteronyms because they were a little more complicated than just being alter egos. Like they all had their individual styles, and they knew each other, and they would like edit each other. And, they had like fights with each other. And he published very little of his own. He published very little in his lifetime. And what he didn't publish is pretty much all in a big trunk somewhere in Lisbon, like thousands of scraps of paper, many of them undifferentiated. So it's like a fun project for a really intrepid editor to take care of. Anyway, if you want, you can buy the book, Pessoa and Company, and read it sort of in tandem with this one. I guess you'd have to buy both. I'm just going to randomly read some bits, and there's actually post-its from the last time I read. And he's concerned a lot with his own lack of identity. And so the book started to take on this. At first it started to be about failures of leadership, and then it became a little bit more about everyone's own personal failure of leadership of their own selves and their own lives, and then the inevitable crash that we are all headed toward in various ways. Our own deaths, the death of nature, all that fun stuff. This is a great night for this. So the person in question: a self consists primarily of unremembered events. The highest number of memories forgotten about a particular person will disappear from the mind of that same person. Usually this happens involuntarily, but some people suppress certain memories. Occurrences tangential to the person tend to retain even less staying power. Many of the moments relating to the person, when recalled, may also be misremembered. What few events anyone remembers may then be interpreted or twisted in any fashion by anyone who has ever had any contact with the subject, however indirect, as well as by those who have had no direct contact or no contact of any kind. Interpretations of these events will then change, sometimes quite rapidly, based on the context in which they appear. False experiences may attach themselves to misremembered occurrences. The self can only keep a handful of its adventures in mind and then explain itself to itself in wildly fluctuating ways until it becomes completely baffled by the nature of the human being at the center of its own story. This is called Other Deaths, and it just happens to be on the next page. 1. Privately, we expect to avoid that other death by dying ourselves. But when the sun swells to several times its current size, or we destroy the Gulf Stream and start the next ice age, we'll die again as catastrophe erases the hatch marks we made in the bark of certain trees. We'd hope to have some lasting effect beyond our individual sayonara, but tough luck. So what then? Is the space program a way of scouring the interstellar real estate section? Bright planet in Prime Crab Nebula, steps from subways, amenities. Once the Gulf is all oil and the ocean's mostly plastic, will the haves just hop a zip spaceship and leave the rest in urban blight? Have we already flipped the bird at history to make psychic room for that upcoming global raspberry? 2. When mankind started dating reason, he didn't meet the family for a long time. Then came that disastrous barbecue when candor told everyone how fat they were. Misinformation insisted on her received ideas. Rationalization explained that nothing can ever go bad in a deep freeze. And authority said grace over burgers chock full of E. coli. But mankind had already fallen in love. And in the throes, you can only hear the sound of your own infatuation, the bloop of the skull becoming impervious to judgment. What a mess. Remember the wedding? 3. In grade school, we laughed at the Stegosaurus for his lack of self-awareness, his unfortunate wardrobe, the walnut-sized brain that has kept him in remedial math since the late Kimmeridgian age. But his lack of ambition made him suitable to a universe where, frankly, not much happens outside major cities, and most of what does takes place in a vacuum, silently, airlessly. Not to diss our opposable thumbs, books, medicines, internets, and everything, but with a slower learning curve, Faust might have cheated Mephistopheles. Inadvertently, of course, but it's hard to deny that the cosmos favors animal ignorance, not man's stupidity. Every year we dredge the beach, then build new houses on the sand. Maybe one or two more of these. Black Rage. Auburn Calloway, a troubled Black FedEx employee, had attended Stanford. On a cargo flight, he tried to kill the pilots with a hammer so that he could crash the plane, committing suicide in such a way that no one would know that it had not been an accident, and his family could collect on a $2.5 million life insurance policy. He succeeded in fracturing both pilots' skulls and dislocating one of their jaws, but they fought back and eventually subdued him. He had also brought a spear gun with him. He got 2 life sentences. I'm such a great person, thought Colin Ferguson. There must be only one thing holding me back. It must be white people. He murdered 6 and injured 19 on the Long Island Railroad. Racism had driven him insane, his lawyer said in his defense. Earlier, he had warned his enemies, black rage will get you. David A. Burke, an American of Jamaican heritage, had just been dismissed from Southwest Airlines. He boarded a plane along with his former boss and handed the guy a note written on a vomit bag. It's sort of ironical that we end up like this. He shot his former employer and entered the cockpit. A flight attendant who noticed the dying man burst in to inform the crew. We have a problem, she said. What is the problem? The captain asked. Burke killed the flight attendant and replied, I'm the problem. He murdered the pilots and pushed the plane into a 70-degree descent, accelerating just beyond the speed of sound. They found part of his thumb. They found the note on the bag. Black rage will get you! Maybe a happier one. I'll read the one for my husband. Love Song of the Pragmatist. Let us go together, my love, hand in hand until we need our Metro cards. Down to the old estate lawyer, and speak to her of what shall become of our possessions once our mortal coils cool down. Let us promise unto one another those material goods that in life we shared, such that neither my demise nor yours should become a logistical maelstrom inside an emotional tsunami. Let neither legal paper shuffling nor squabbling of relatives turbocharge anyone's grief. While we live, let us enjoy the tax benefits of matrimony. Let not our elixir of love require a copay. Give to me, my dear, if you must, an inexpensive yet meaningful piece of jewelry, ideally handed down, nothing flashy, okay? Let not this symbol stand for our eternal love. It's just a fucking symbol. And never should we pretend that our love demands a material counterpart. Our love is itself. It belongs to us, and we should give not a shit who else can see it as long as we feel it evermore. Please don't hire a band, just play the song on your smartphone or something, and pick a flower from a public park. All right, what are we looking at here? Maybe one more. Oh, I know it. Which one I'll do. Wait, I thought I knew where this one was. Stop. Outside the city, lights flash in his rearview mirror. The police car pulls ahead of him and he stops behind it. The white cop emerges and looks angry, or happy and content. It would not matter. The motorist of color freezes. He tries to avoid the appearance of carrying anything or of raising his hands. He tries to avoid the appearance of appearance. When the policeman reaches the window, the motorist powers it down with his pinky. The cop removes a piece of paper from his holster. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? He asks. This is his weapon, the violence of words. Yes, you may, officer, the man of color says, cringing from the pain. How do I love thee, the officer continues. Let me count the ways. The motorist feels harassed. He finds the cop's behavior inappropriate and hurtful. Also, addressing modern people as thee is weird. My river runs to thee, he announces. I'll fetch thee brooks from spotted nooks. All of the officer's quotations had come from white canonical writers. This man of color would never see justice. Thanks. So there's some kind of a Q&A.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Questions.
I didn't do it.
Not all at once.
There's usually an awkward pause here.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think that would happen tonight. Okay, here we go.
What on earth?
So I bought the audiobook, and my question is that why do you choose to voice Clara herself
What, just tonight now?
for the audiobook?
I didn't.
Oh,
That's
Well-
not me.
oh, sorry.
There's a trans comedian named Flame Monroe who is playing the part of Carlotta on the audiobook. Thank you for mentioning it though, because we worked so hard on that thing that it's like whenever anybody mentions it or says something nice about it, I'm just like, thank you so much. Yeah. It was important to me to involve somebody like Flame in that. And I thought, this is a role. This is something that could provide, more visibility for someone from the trans community. And I also thought it would just be fun. And I knew I could do it myself, but there was something like weird about that to me too. So I was looking around for somebody. I saw Flame Monroe's YouTube, like her stand-up routine on YouTube. And I was like, oh snap, Carlotta fell out of the sky. I mean, she's the right age. She's the right sensibility. She's like, doesn't give a fuck. And it turned out that like she's had experiences that are not dissimilar from Carlotta. Like she did spend some time incarcerated and she has 3 children. And it was so much fun. I was just out in LA a couple of weeks ago and I hung out with Flame. She's got this Monday night thing that she calls Free Voices. And it's just like the most inappropriate comedians you've heard in like the last 15 years, just like going at it. But they're constantly kind of apologizing for it. If they're like, we're just having fun here. If you're offended, leave.
One thing I noticed about when I was reading Did Nobody Give a Shit About Carlotta was that I noticed that the main themes were around both her trans identity and her being incarcerated. But I also thought that it could have been where
the main theme is around her humanity, actually. I feel like I have to push back on that. It's not a book about a trans woman. It's a book about a person who has particular experiences. She's also biracial.
Mm-hmm.
She's also, the most important thing about that character is that she's from New York.
yeah, that's true.
It really is.
Yeah, you could tell, definitely.
And like a lot of people, she has all of these things going on at once. I just find like as useful as identity politics can be in politics, it doesn't really describe the way people actually feel when they're alive. It doesn't describe the way you feel when you're alive. And that's the job of a novelist. That's the job of a storyteller. And so to put those kind of limitations on it, I thought, well, there has to be a way to do this where the limitations are kind of like not there, but they're not like, I don't have to be so careful with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like as somebody who really identifies with her in the way that I do and has, so much compassion for her and for people who are in situations like her, I just felt like, that was the most important thing to convey. I'm sorry, I just totally.
No, it's okay.
But you totally touched a nerve.
No, it's all right. I just wanted to ask, as a trans person myself, I wanted to know why you made her trans. Like what made that such an integral part of her story?
What happened was I wanted to write about how much Brooklyn has changed over the last 50 years. Then I was like, well, how could I put that in a book? For whom would this be news? And it was like, okay, how about somebody who's been in prison? And I started researching that and I was like, oh shit, trans people have a really terrible time in prison. And if I were I would, and the people who are our enemies are not making distinctions about, who's gay, who's queer, who's trans, who's this, who's that, right? So I was kind of, projecting my own potential experience in the carceral system into the kind of story that I wanted to tell. And I started reading the stories about trans people in prison being housed in facilities that were not representative of their gender expression. And it was so horrible. Like anything that happens to Carlotta is like a Mickey Mouse version of what actually happens to trans people in that kind of situation. It's just horrifying. So I felt like, well, I have the opportunity, I have this, platform, I guess, for lack of a better term, to shed some light on that in a way that I hope is, compassionate and shows that I really care about, people who are in situations like that, especially because they're my brothers and sisters, and I don't want to go too far into this, but like, you know what I mean. And the thing that I thought was, then once I'd made that decision, I noticed that all of these other things that I was planning were starting to make more sense. Like, it was kind of beautiful to me that Carlotta doesn't just come home and see that everything has changed in Brooklyn. It's also that she has come into herself and nobody recognizes her. And the other thing that I didn't mention is that underneath all of the story, I realized at a certain point in writing it that writing a story about somebody coming back from traumatic events in upstate New York is, by necessity, you're retelling the Odyssey, because of the New York State has this thing called the New York Central Military Tract, where there was a guy in the office when they were giving out all the land after the Revolutionary War. There's this one guy named Robert Harper who was charged with like naming 28 parcels of land in upstate New York, and he was a classical literature buff. And he started naming everything after classical references. And so there's tons of things in upstate New York that are named after classical things. And so that became part of what I wanted to do. But then I was like, oh, that's kind of tired. Everybody's done that. So at the same time, I mean, it's just like this crazy snowball of like things that happen. My husband, who is of Irish descent, and we went to Ireland, and I decided I was going to read Ulysses because it's in the same way that I'd read Pessoa going to Portugal. I was like, I'll take a representative work of literature. And then I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll use both of them as source material, because it's not hard enough to do what I want to do. And then all of these things from Ulysses started making sense in terms of, like, there are ways in which Leopold Bloom is marginalized and feminized in that book. I mean, I'm not a Joyce scholar, so I can't really go back and tell you exactly. But there's one of the episodes in which everybody is in this bar and they start switching genders, and it's like there are all these things that started to make sense. Like in the Odyssey, Odysseus goes back home, and he discovers that nobody recognizes him, right? And I always thought that was kind of dumb. Like, what, really, you don't recognize Odysseus after all this time? But for Carlotta, it actually makes more sense, because people who haven't seen her in 20 years don't know that she's transitioned, and they're like, who's this child? So it started to make more and more sense as the more it went on.
Someone from this side, possibly. Yes.
Hi. So I have a really quick question about why you chose Brooklyn to be the setting of the story. When before I got here, I actually researched a little bit about you, and I figured out that you're from the Bronx and you were raised in Yonkers.
I was born in the Bronx.
Yes, but you were raised in Yonkers and now you live in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to know what made Brooklyn the ideal place for your story.
I have a long history with Brooklyn. It's not in my bio, but in the 1950s, my grandfather bought a brownstone in Fort Greene for $11,000. Can you believe it? I know. And it was a really dangerous Black neighborhood. And my parents were divorced and my dad lived in the city. And whenever he would pick us up from Yonkers and drop us with his mother, and we would spend a lot of time in this house. And over time, I've watched it go from dangerous Black neighborhood to not just like whitening, gradually whitening, gentrifying neighborhood that's really expensive to live in, but also kind of a literary capital of the country. And that was a really weird transition to me. And I felt like, you know, my first two books, I kind of pretend to be a Southerner. And I was avoiding writing about New York because I felt like, you know, everybody's written about New York. But then I realized that I had this like very intimate relationship with this one area, and then I could really sort of go granular on that one place. And I live there now, so it was really just kind of like, and then of course, you know, when I started thinking about incorporating material or just taking inspiration from Ulysses, that's also a book where, you know, it's kind of a travelogue through a city in a similar way. It's Dublin, obviously, but you know, similar idea.
Yeah. So when you were writing for Colada, did you have to get into character to be able to write, or was it more?
Oh no, that shit just come right on my head, honey.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or was it more of a natural voice?
No, it's natural. Hello.
All right. So I guess my second question is, was there any chapter that you spent more time on, and if there was, why?
Is there any? Oh God, it just I feel like I spent a lot of time on all of them. I think, geez. Actually can't remember. There's one probably like what's chapter 6? For some reason 6 is coming to mind. Is that the one? Oh yeah. The one where that's basically Carlotta doing her impression of Odysseus, describing what happened to him in Troy to her best friend Doodle. That one is kind of rough in spots. I feel like I don't remember it being arduous, but I did want to make sure that it wasn't weirdly wrong.
I think we have time for one more, maybe two.
I got all night.
Okay, so first off, I really like your like writing style, especially when you were reading. It felt like a person having like a conversation in their head. And that's like really funny because like one time she'll be saying something and then the comment about rent in your head, found that really funny. But my question that I mainly want to ask is about chapter 10. So chapter 10 to me, it feels like a really long monologue. Like there's no quotation marks and it's like just Carlotta talking. And I'm going to be very honest, it was very confusing to me because it was like I went from like people having conversations to just Carlotta waking up on a beach after getting her money stolen because she got blackout drunk. Everybody should have read the book.
Okay.
But
Spoilers.
can you like explain it? Because it's like in some parts it's like confusing.
It's a reference to Ulysses. The final chapter of Ulysses is a long monologue by Molly Bloom, who's I was going to say Harold Bloom's wife, Leopold Bloom's wife, and it's like, you know, I think it's one of the easier chapters to read, and so it's like more famous than some others. And at a certain point in the writing of this book, I was like, oh, you know what? I could kind of rip that off to do the last chapter of this book. But it also serves a couple of different purposes narratively, which is like none of the book there are a lot of memories of Carlotta being in prison, but I didn't want any of the book to take place with her actually there. So there's a big gap between in time between chapter 9 and 10.
Mm.
And in chapter 10, she's doing that thing of just like, dreaming about what her future is going to be like, that I think is so heartbreaking when just about anybody does it, because, we're all going the same place. And, there's something really bittersweet about Carlotta. It was one of those things that I thought, well, people are going to either feel like this is a hopeful ending, or they're going to feel like, really like it's not going to work out given everything else that's happened in the past. And I love that feeling of like, maybe not, maybe not. That's like kind of where we're all trapped in life. Maybe not.
That's fair.
Hi, could you send that up to, or was it all the way to the front row? I think we got
One more.
There were a lot of funny moments throughout the book, and I was just wondering that did you intentionally make Carlotta's personality and her coping mechanism similar? Because there's a lot of like humorous moments even when she's dealing with hard times.
Wait, can you repeat the question? I missed a key portion of it.
Did you intentionally make Carlotta's personality and coping mechanism similar?
Oh yeah. I mean, humor is largely, I mean, I wouldn't say largely, but humor is a way of getting through some of the worst things that could possibly happen to you. And I think it's, in addition to that, it's like something that people who go through the kinds of things that Carlotta goes through have to have in order to make it. I feel like she has to be able to laugh at least some part of her situation if she's going to make it. It's also something that's comes relatively easily to me. And I know that it's not something that comes easily to everybody. So it's a thing that I try to do. And I mean, I feel like I'm around a lot of people who are always trying to be funny, and maybe that's a little bit, I sort of try to replicate that in my work, because it's something I hear a lot of people doing. Maybe I just hang around with people who think they're witty or whatever. But they're usually not witty in the way that Carlotta is witty. Is that it?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Books will be on sale at the back table, and James will be signing in a little bit. Thanks for coming.
I didn't say this before, but I am largely a creation of Jennifer Egan. So when she comes, ask her questions about me.